Okay, so he'll yell at guys.
Yeah, that's what it seems like.
Josh Schaefer, Kings radio play-by-play guy. Before that, Ontario Reign play-by-play guy. So he was there when Marco Sturm was head coach of the Ontario Reign. Josh, good to talk to you. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, guys, anytime. Pleasure to be here.
Okay, we're looking for people who know anything about Marco Sturm outside of him being a player and a nice guy, because we can tell you that, but you covered him as a coach. What is he as a coach?
Well, you're right. He's a great guy. He's a great coach as well. It was interesting to get to work with Marco up close because, you know him as a player. I saw him as a player. And you hear all these things about how he's such a really good guy and how they loved him as an assistant coach with the Kings and the different things that he had his hands in. And then when he came down to join the Ontario Reign, it was nice to get to see his approach to working with the players. I know that he loves working with younger guys. There's a reason why the players loved working with him with the Reign. Obviously, I think that there's a reason why he was linked to some other jobs in the past as well. And I think it's the way that he works with young players, with the prospects. He said before, he views players, especially the younger ones, as if they're all his kids. So he takes a lot of pride in the individual successes that players have, especially those young players, but how that ultimately results in the team getting positive results as well. So it was really interesting to see him take that approach after he had been with the Kings for a couple of seasons, and then gone down to Ontario, where he really was. It's interesting. I kind of view Marco as kind of the CEO when it comes to a head coach, because I think he works better as a head coach than he does as an assistant coach, because he gets to utilize his talent different ways, and kind of have his hands in a bunch of different areas, as opposed to being an assistant coach focusing on one specific aspect of the team's game rather than, being involved in kind of everything.
Yeah, I feel like the one consistent thing that we've heard from everybody is just how good of a guy he is, and like kind of a player's coach who really, really connects well with his players. I saw Mark Diver from the Providence Bruins beat say that like he's heard that he's just a great communicator. What about his style of play? Like as a Bruins fan, what's the style of play that we can anticipate him bringing to this team?
From my understanding, when I was with the Reign, was that he was kind of put in that position to be the next head coach of Ontario, because of how that would help the Kings going forward. He was an assistant coach on Todd McClellan's staff. He had kind of come from that, direction. And ultimately, for me, from what I could understand, it was the Kings wanted a shift in coaching for the Ontario Reign when they had this influx of young, talented prospects. Now, one thing led to another, and Marco Sturm ends up as the head coach a couple years after the Kings had kind of started to get all these young prospects in. And I think one of the big reasons why Marco worked in Ontario was because at the start, he knew how Todd McClellan's group wanted to play and what was the expectation of LA Kings hockey back then. So Marco becomes the head coach of the Ontario Reign to work with the prospects like he likes to do, to help develop that young talent, but also prepare those players for the opportunity to get called up, and they immediately fit into the way that the Kings wanted to play. They fit into what was their style at the time under Todd McClellan, and now things have changed with Jim Hillard being the head coach. They started to get a little bit more open, but they're focusing on, that defensive style of hockey and how that contributes to the offensive side. And that's obviously something that the Kings did really, really well this year. But for Marco this year, I think that it allowed him to coach a little bit differently, to have more of his, fingerprints on the way that the game was being played. It's different because, this was my first year with the Kings after spending the last couple of years with the Reign. But looking back at how the Reign played this year and the personnel that they had in Ontario, it was very different. And there were still a lot of guys that were going up and down between Ontario and LA. And ultimately, I think what Marco had done when he was with the Reign was he made the team competitive in its own right and good enough to beat anybody at the American League level. But he also made the players competitive enough and well implemented into the organization style of hockey so that when they did get promoted, similar to how it was when Todd McClellan was the head coach in LA, players were ready to succeed immediately. And we saw that a lot the last couple of seasons when guys did get called up late in the season for the LA Kings. This year, it was Jeff Malott. Jeff Malott's not a prospect, but the way that they played in Ontario made him the perfect fit to come up to LA when both Alex Turcotte and Tanner Jeannot, two very different players, were both hurt at the same time. They got the style of play they needed from a top-line guy in Ontario, Jeff Malott, who had a terrific season under Marco Sturm. So I think it's kind of just making sure that the team is competitive in its own right, but also giving individual players the opportunity to succeed regardless of what that level is. And I think that ultimately makes Marco a really good fit in Boston at the end of the day.
If Sturm coached him better in Ontario, Jeff Malott's first goal would have counted. So that's that's the shortcoming of the sickest goal
one of the best.
Life.
Yeah, it was unbelievable, and it was funny because after that happened, I joke that, once that got called back, Nick Nixon, who's a Hall of Fame LA Kings broadcaster, he kind of walked into my booth in the intermission. And I kind of looked at him. I was like, did you also really like your call on that goal? And he was like, yeah, I thought it was pretty good. And I've gone back and listened, and I was like, man, Nick's call was really good. And now it won't count. So
that was a fun week for the Kings, scoring unbelievable illegal goals in the NHL, being like, you know what? Some rule they have to be allowed. On Sturm, so you say he's a nice guy. Covered him a little when he was in Boston. Made a really good impression on me just as a nice person. And you say that he's a CEO type. How's his demeanor as a coach? Because now he comes to Boston, where there's already a fan base that's like, don't just hire a former Bruin. We want a competitive team. And the roster, I mean, we all know what the roster is, so there might be some growing pains. How do you think he is suited to handle what probably will not be the most smooth transition in his first head coaching gig in the NHL?
It's really interesting because I think you guys might be able to speak on this better than me, obviously, but it's a weird situation for the Bruins because is it a rebuild? Like I'm not really sure what to expect from the situation that the Bruins are in. So Marco sliding in there, I think you're right, and I think that a lot of fan bases kind of have that hesitation when maybe a former player is brought in to be a coach. I mean, we've certainly seen things like that at a ton of places around the NHL. But ultimately, Marco, I think, is a really good communicator. He's really good with the players. He's great with the media, as I'm sure you've seen before. He is a terrific interview. He's great with the media. He'll tell you whatever you ask him. And really, when it comes to the players, I had done some work for LA Kings Insider this last year at the rookie face-off at development camp, and that's when the minor league coaching staff really has their hands in whatever all of the prospects are doing. Especially at rookie camp, they're the coaching staff for all of these preseason tournaments. And talking with Marco, you get a little bit of insight on how he communicates with his players. Whether it's these mid-season conversations with guys and talking about growing their role or expanding their role. I know that last year he had a conversation with one of Ontario's young players who absolutely lit up the Ontario Hockey League and then transitioned into kind of a different role in his first year in pro hockey. And that takes a good communicator to help a player like that who might have an idea of what they want their pro hockey experience to be like and the way that they play the game. And suddenly you have a very rude wake-up call to what pro against grown men that are twice your age, twice your size. It's hard. And Marco, who played as many games as he did, has coached in the different environments that he's been in as both an assistant and now a head coach. But I think it really takes those elite communication skills and hearing the way that he's communicated with players to get them to kind of change their psyche a little bit to improve their own game and the team's game going forward, I think is commendable. And the one thing for Marco, something that it seems like I've been a little bit privy to based off of the way that, things have been told to me and what I've seen, but also with my personal interactions with him as a member of the media, he is a terrific communicator. And he's also very vocal on the bench as well. I mean, that guy goes through cough drops like crazy. So he's very vocal. He's a great communicator. And I think that these are all really good things that you want out of a first-time NHL head coach in a very interesting situation, it looks like.
Okay, so he'll yell at guys.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. I couldn't necessarily speak to in what way he would yell at somebody, but he's a terrific communicator, and I think that's something that has always been very evident about him, both at the NHL and at the AHL level.
Okay, well, Josh, it was a very unique predicament in which Pete and I and realistically speaking, everybody in the hockey world found themselves, because everyone knows who Marco Sturm is and everyone knows what he looks like and everyone knows what he has done, but they don't know shit about him as a coach. So your expertise here was invaluable. Thank you so much, man.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Enjoy Marco. He's a great guy. I'm very happy for him. He absolutely deserves it, and looking forward to hopefully crossing paths again with him next year in LA and Boston.
Hell yeah. Well,
Hell yeah.
we do a lot of Kings on this show, so we'll also have you on down the road. Appreciate you, man.
Sounds great. Thanks, guys.
We all silly like the mayor.